This is the NeuroExplain weekly selection of neurosurgical literature, 2021, week 5. This week we have two highly similar studies, but with a totally different outcome. The first one is by Wenyi et al., published in JAMA 2021, and it's about endovascular treatment alone versus intravenous alteplase plus endovascular treatment in acute ischemic stroke. The authors performed a non-inferiority RCT with 90-day follow-up. 116 patients were in the endovascular treatment alone group and 118 patients in the alteplase plus endovascular treatment group, in which endovascular treatment consisted of mechanic thrombectomy. In the mechanic thrombectomy alone group, 54% had a good outcome with a P non-inferiority of 0.003. 6% had a hemorrhage and 17% died. In the alteplase plus thrombectomy group, 47% had a good outcome. 7% had a bleeding and 18% died. And the primary endpoint, good outcome, was defined as functional independent, meaning modified Rankin scale between 0 and 2. The non-inferiority margin was minus 10%, and this study was stopped early because of good efficacy. Then the other study for this week is by Suzuki et al., also published in the JAMA 2021, which is also on the effect of mechanical thrombectomy without versus with IV thrombolysis on functional outcome in acute ischemic stroke, which means it's a kind of a similar study to the previous one. Also, this is a non-inferiority RCT with a 90-day follow-up in which 101 patients were in the thrombectomy alone group and 103 in the alteplase plus thrombectomy group. And this study also in the abstract defined the dose of alteplase, which was 0.6 milligram per kilogram. The outcomes are in the mechanical thrombectomy group, 59% good outcome, again defined as modified Rankin between 0 and 2. 34% bleeding and 8% death, whereas in the alteplase plus thrombectomy group there was 57% good outcome, 51% bleeding and 9% death. In this case, the study conclusion was different than the previous one because in this study the authors failed to demonstrate non-inferiority, but wide confidence intervals cannot conclude inferiority. The main difference between previous study and this one was in this case non-inferiority was differently defined with a margin odds ratio of 0.74 and one-sided significance threshold of 0.025, which is a confidence interval of 97.5%. That means it makes sense to compare these studies side by side. The first one by Wenyi has been abbreviated as the DEFT trial, and the second one by Suzuki is abbreviated as the SKIP trial. So here you see both infographics or visual abstracts as you wish back side to side. Both studies focused on thrombectomy alone versus the alteplase addition. The DEFT trial concluded it was non-inferior to do thrombectomy alone, and the SKIP trial failed to demonstrate non-inferiority. They are both RCTs from 2021, comparable group of participants in number. The first study, DEFT, is a Chinese group, and the second one is a Japanese group. So as a main conclusion, it's mainly a different definition of non-inferiority between both trials, which you can see in the abstract, and slightly different statistics, which come to a totally different result, which means this will still end up with a more research is needed conclusion despite two relatively large randomized trials, and differences in methodology, both statistics but also the way you perform the procedure, is going to make quite a difference in outcome. And with this, we finish this vascular week in NeuroExplain literature selection. If you like it, please follow us on YouTube or on the social media channels, which you can find on the website.